What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the GSD Podcast. I'm so excited about our episode this week. And Steve, I think you're going to be excited about this one too, because he's actually your state senator,
That's
correct?
accurate. That's right.
Let's
Out of the
go.
great city of Edmond.
Let's go. Absolutely. So the President Pro Tem of the State Senate of Oklahoma, Senator Greg Treat. Senator, you doing all right?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Well, Pro Tem, I'm so excited to have you on, excited to talk a little bit. We're leading into session here. So much going on. We know your schedule is busy. So first off, thank you for taking the time just to sit down with us for a little bit and kind of pick your brain on some topics. So Steve, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, so we have a lot to ask you. And, of course, one of the things that struck me on the way over here is what's the life of the Pro Tem? I mean, literally, think about that. Take us through like a normal day for you or through your experience as Pro Tem of the Senate.
Well, I got my kid up at 6 a.m. to get on the bus at 6:40, and then my second kid got up at 7:05 and got him on the bus at 7:34, and then I headed up this way. And I've been preparing all day for this opportunity to talk to you.
I'm sure.
I've been meeting after meeting after meeting, and it depends a lot of the time of year. So the Pro Tem really work year-round with the Senate employees and with members trying to come up with budget issues for the next session and policy ideas.
Yeah.
But it varies day to day, and when you get February to May, it is nonstop at the Capitol. But the rest of the year, we're getting prepared. We're still overseeing things. Mm-hmm. It stays pretty busy, but I'm also a father of 3, so that keeps me busy as well.
Love it. You kind of mentioned some of the policy things too. And just to kind of pick your brain on that, we're so close to getting into session. What are a few of the topics and ideas that the Senate, that you're kind of moving your caucus in the direction? What are you guys going to be looking at this year?
You know, obviously we have to deal with COVID and what happened, and do we need to have any modernizations on open meetings or other issues like that.
Right.
Budget issues that came out, we cut the budget by $1.3 billion at the end of session off certification because the numbers were looking worse at the end of last session. Thankfully, the numbers are looking up a little bit better. But we've been talking in Oklahoma for 30-plus years about economic diversification, and I think you'll see us very focused on not just having rhetoric about that, but having some measurements and trying to move the ball toward true economic diversification.
So one of the things you talked about there, if you're all right with it, I'd like to kind of dive in a little bit because it's been a topic of a lot of discussion, which is open meetings and some talk around that. I know there was talk around some special session. I saw that that's probably not something we're looking at this year, but can you kind of go into that? What's the Senate? Are you specifically looking at legislation that would kind of identify that and making those government meetings more virtual and open to just the general public?
Yeah, you know, I think we've got to look at opportunities and what have we learned during this crisis, and having more people involved. Open meetings is extremely important. Having transparency and having the people be able to see how their government, their boards and commissions serve them and be able to have input in the process is extremely important. So we want to make sure we don't erode any of that. At the end of last session, some of your viewers may know we amended temporarily the open meetings to allow for participation virtually. Previously, the law said that you had to have a majority of people in the actual room and together, and then other people could participate. They'd have to participate in a publicly accessible venue. And that just wasn't practical to try to get business done at city councils, at school boards, at state agencies. And so we amended it to allow for virtual participation through November 15th.
Gotcha.
That obviously has run out. And so the pressure was building to try to have a special session to extend that deadline beyond. I was very supportive of that, but it became readily apparent you have a 5-day minimum to pass any bill at the state capitol. And we needed to wait until organizational day, until the 58th legislature really convened to make it most appropriate. So that was Tuesday. And if you take Tuesday and then you do 5 legislative days from there, we'd have been into next week before we could have actually got it to the governor's desk. And that would have been about 3 weeks before we start session. So what the speaker and I've talked about, and my legislative colleagues and also the executive branch, is we can fast track something in the first week or 2 of session, and hopefully we get there. We've been working with the Oklahoma Municipal League, Secondary School Board Association, and others to try to press association to try to make sure that we get it right.
Huh.
I think the first step you'll see us do is just an extension of that temporary lifting of the requirement for participation. What I personally want to do, and this doesn't involve the other parties, it will involve the other parties, but I don't want to speak on their behalf.
Right.
I would like to modernize open meetings to allow more participation. When you look at a Deer Creek school board where my kids go to school, you had upwards of 300, 400 people watching those meetings online that previously had no access. They may have been still working, they may have been at dinner, but they were interested in what was going on at the school board. And this has given us real insight that people want to watch what's going on in their state government, their local government.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we modernize open meetings to be able to afford that. I think greater participation and greater access to the public is something you will probably see me work on throughout session. That won't be the first week or two. The first week or two will just be extending that sunset.
Gotcha. Okay.
So some of the things I want to say before we get into more questions is, one, I appreciate your partnership with OMES.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, when I took the job last January and even previous, I was deputy director at ISD. Just being a newcomer to state government, you hear all kinds of things about what you can and can't get done, and relationships are frayed. And I would say that you personally and your team have been really good for me and my group to work with. And I'll recognize Senator Thompson as one of those prevalent voices that I've done a lot with. But with you personally, I know we've talked about state data and what state data means and what it could mean for citizens if we are able to get maybe something enacted through legislation or something that provides citizens a full 360 view of the services they receive from the state. Talk to us a little bit about what state data means to you and where you think that could potentially head for Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, I think we're behind on that compared to the private sector big time, and behind in comparison with other states in a lot of ways. We have all kinds of data collection sources through all our state agencies, boards, and commissions, but those don't communicate with each other.
Right.
And so oftentimes our constituents are upset. They just shared this information with the Department of Human Services, and the tax commission's asking for the same information. And to be able to have some collaboration, obviously you have to worry about privacy and privacy breaches, security breaches. But I'm very interested in modernizing it, because when you can start to aggregate data, you can start to make better policy decisions on this end of actually knowing, are the programs we're passing, is the legislation we're passing, are the programs that the executive branch creates, are they really hitting their target? And that data is going to allow us, if we modernize the way we address it, to be able to serve Oklahomans in a much better way.
Oh, I like that. And Steve, you kind of mentioned it also, along with the policy decision, having a more clear picture of the full scale of all the information available to legislators, is being able to then put something in place that allows Oklahomans to see in one spot all the services that are able to be provided to them.
That's accurate. Either through a web portal, Steve Harp should be able to log in, and if I'm consuming services from DHS, if I have, if I owe the state some money, I should be able to hit a button and pay the Treasury. And you're right, Senator Treat, we are behind in that space, but we are working diligently towards that.
Yeah.
The Adobe project through the CARES the money that we used is a step in the right direction. But it starts with data classification and getting agencies to understand that this is all state data and something that we could use as like a data lake, basically, and then draw from that data lake. Yeah. Additionally to things like this, tell us about how you see technology, at least in helping us modernize where we are today, because the state in some ways actually has made tremendous progress in the last 4 or 5 months, but we still have some items, some I don't know, I think we still have a lot of runway there as well. Do you hear from your constituents about, hey, we if you can order pizza, for example, I always use the Papa John's model. If you can order pizza and follow your pizza, then maybe you should be able to follow the services you receive from the state as well. I mean, what type of feedback do you get on technology from constituents?
Mainly when people call a senator's office or a representative's office, it's when they're at a point of frustration or breaking point on they've tried every avenue. And so we don't normally hear about a solution to it. We hear a frustration about, why don't I know? When I order something from Amazon, I know almost to the day when it's going to arrive, and then I can track it, just like you talked about Papa John's. I think having people like you, Steve, frankly, in state government is a real blessing to our state at this point, because you have private sector experience too. So you've seen where there have been market forces that have driven a company to make these decisions, but you've seen how it serves the consumer. So if you want to serve the customer, in this case, Oklahomans who own state government, they are our boss, and they are the ones we serve. I think having a customer-focused service model is great, and data can help us get there. Technology can help us get there. And we've seen during COVID that technology has come a long way since we were younger and trying to participate remotely. What we're doing right now would have been impossible just a few years back without having a lot of interruptions. And I think that we need to continue to be on the ball. The Unemployment Security Commission, which I know that you have a lot of information and helped get them going, it really exposed some weaknesses. We're using the COBOL system, and other state government agencies still using that. Things that industry abandoned decades ago, state government's still using, and we must continue to invest in that data infrastructure, that technology infrastructure, to get up to speed to serve Oklahomans in a much better way.
I love that, and I want to jump off that real quick because that's a perfect segue into what you've been doing inside the state Senate. I know that, and I use this term, but you're really one of the first modern pro tems, if you will, in the Senate, in that you're the first one to really invest in new technologies, new websites, more business processes, a focus on that within the Senate. Take a deep look at that. Can you talk to that a little bit about some of the investments you've been making within the Senate, why you feel like that's a very significant thing to make sure and emphasize?
I've never heard you refer to me as the first modern pro tem. So if you could add and hip, I would really appreciate it.
I'll send Aaron a little bit of those. Yeah,
I think Wikipedia is getting updated tonight.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know if your generation, Caden, still uses hip. So whatever that word would be,
you're the first. Yeah, you're the first hip pro tem.
That may show that I'm not modern if I still use the word hip. No, I believe deeply in technology. I'm a little bit of a technology geek, even though I don't understand all of the data points. I'm always somebody that likes to use technology as soon as it comes out because I'm just intrigued by how it can improve my life and improve my ability to find information. And so when I took over as pro tem, we had not invested, not to any fault of my predecessors, they just didn't have the revenue. We were in some real revenue shortfalls. So it had been a long time since we had invested in infrastructure at the Capitol. No one had seen it as a priority. I was extremely interested in moving us off of having our own servers housed here at the Capitol, which I thought was took up a lot of footprint that we could be using for office space, could be used for visitor center, could be used for committee rooms. And we were having to keep those chilled, and so we had staff having to come up here and making sure that everything was fine all the time. And so when I looked at upgrading, the original proposal was to get new servers, and they were really excited that it took up less of a footprint. But I said, no, we need to move to a cloud-based computing system, and we did that. And it's a little bit more upfront cost on some of that, but long-term we reap the benefit because we get the software licenses updated annually. We stay up to the latest, greatest. And it was not my purpose to be prepared for a pandemic, but it served us well when the pandemic did hit for allowing our employees to work remotely. I don't want to say seamlessly because everyone experiences some difficulty. Some people's home Wi-Fi is not up to speed or their software is not up to date on their computer that's issued by the Senate. But having moved to that has greatly improved our lives. There was a little bit of a headache moment when we were making the transition, when they were having to rewrite some of the script, but or the macros, because our systems were so based on macros that it was asinine how many things they had to do. But it was extremely important. I want to continue to modernize. We have gone to AI on doing the transcription of our services. We make sure that all of Oklahoma's Senate business is closed captioned. And we were having somebody type that, which is great. That's a good profession.
Right.
But when I looked at the budget, I realized that the accuracy of the technology and the flexibility to be able to have meetings whenever we needed without having to give 48-hour notice, getting some AI on some of that stuff was really beneficial to the state and to our citizenry. that are hearing impaired. It's the difference from them being able to participate fully or them just being able to observe and not know what's going on.
No, that's awesome.
Hey, just interesting. So, for all the horribleness that happened in 2020 around COVID, and we're still in the pandemic for sure, there was a lot of reasons for citizens and or state workers to lose hope to some degree because of some of them lost loved ones. I lost an uncle during the process. And although the government continued to process, the government would continue to provide services, there were some very difficult times. But from your pro tem perspective, what continues to give you hope? I mean, what message of hope do you have that maybe you could share with citizens or even with the folks at the state they're doing the work to keep almost 4 million people engaged with either SNAP benefits or a tax commission or whatever? I mean, how do you see that, Senator Treat?
So I've been very reflective on this the last 24 hours. The disaster we saw in our nation's capital yesterday really made me more emotional than I thought I would be on an incident. I never thought I would see that in the United States of America. I used to work for U.S. Senator Tom Coburn, know many people that work on Capitol Hill, and am personal friends with many of our delegation. And that could be easily, you could lose hope about the future. I stayed up last night until about 3 or 4 watching the proceedings. I just couldn't take my eyes off what was happening and Mike Pence in the position he was in. Mm-hmm. And so I gave a speech Tuesday that was just about how this Senate body needs to be about service heart, Jesus modeled in the Bible, having respect for each other, and being curious, not judgmental, which is a Walt Whitman quote, but it actually came from I watched it on Ted Lasso. Not prejudging, Steve, when you come to me with that idea, not prejudging, oh yeah, of course OMES is coming. They're just trying to get more power. But really looking at it from your perspective and trying to put myself in your shoes. And I've challenged senators to join me in that fight. Not that fight, that goal. Yeah, I've challenged myself. I think our country is at a crossroads right now, and Oklahoma's part of it, about how do we treat people with respect. Social media has gained access to grandparents being able to see their grandkids and pictures and keep up with old high school classmates, but there's also been a level of toxicity to it. Yeah. And so here's what gives me hope. Is if you come to the Oklahoma State Senate and you watch a procedure, we may adamantly disagree with each other. We may be diametrically opposed to each other. We may have a different faith belief than the person we're arguing with. But we do it in such a way that I think Oklahomans should be proud, and we hold ourselves to that standard. Senator Kay Floyd, one of the people I didn't mention when you were talking about delegation, but she is the Democrat leader of the Senate. I'm the leader of the Senate and a Republican, but we get along exceedingly well. We have a mutual respect. And so I think not to look inward when you ask a question about what should give people hope, but I want people to know the way that people acted yesterday in trying to have an insurrection, trying to go into the Capitol. The people and the level of vitriol you see on the world stage and especially on the national stage, we don't have that at the Oklahoma State Senate. And as the leader of the Oklahoma State Senate, I will try to jealously guard that in Oklahoma. Yep. And so I want you to come up and see it. Now, there are some times that people come up here heated and fight and don't represent the best of the Oklahoma standard. Mm-hmm. But as the pro tem, I want to hold us to a much higher standard. And just going around the district, I was up for re-election this year, so I had to knock doors. And I know this is not a political show. I'm not going to take it that way. But just hearing how people have had to rearrange their lives. Steve, I didn't know about your uncle, you said. I'm sorry for your loss. I've seen that type of loss through friends. Thankfully, my family has not experienced it, but I've seen it with friends and seen it with people I know. So I'm deeply sorry for your loss. And a lot of people are experiencing that type of thing throughout Oklahoma. But as I knocked on doors in the middle of COVID, I stepped back. I had a mask on my wrist if somebody wanted to come up talking to me. But people are innovative. People are finding ways to still work. People are finding ways to serve people in their neighborhood. They're literally checking on the 90-year-old neighbor, bringing them groceries. And so it just gives me hope that people, the love that you see emulated in the Bible, I still see when I go door to door in Senate District 47 and when I travel around. And I have not lost hope in humanity. I've not lost hope in self-governance. And I want to make sure that what we do here at the state capitol reflects well on people putting trust in this form of government. It's really a social contract, and we must hold up our end of the bargain.
Yeah.
So a couple things just real quick, if I may. One, I want to recognize Senator Kurt and also Senator Floyd that we've met with the Democratic Congress or Caucus. Sorry, I'm from the great state of Georgia. I can't always pronunciate very well. No, but seriously, I appreciate the audience with anyone in the Senate, but specifically as a, I'm in a non-political role in state government, but at the same time, we take feedback from everyone, and they've given us some very good ideas. They've been good partners.
Right.
But honestly, it's also I wish people, our citizens, had the ability. Maybe we'll get there technologically one day where they could experience this, where they could come to the floor. They could, other than like the view of sitting in the stands and watching, because that is one way to consume it, but do it in a way that's virtual, where they can do it from their living room, but also feel like they're right there on the floor with you. Because the passion of the elected officials when they're debating the issues is amazing. I actually go and sit in multiple hearings that aren't necessarily OMES related, so that A, I can learn, and B, be a part of it and understand where people's passions are. So hopefully through OMES we can figure out where our place is in that and drive it. But we do have a great elected official legislature, both in the House and in the Senate, and it's a credit to what you guys do through your leadership to get all that energy into the right space to do good things for the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Well, Pro Tem, the whole purpose around this GSD podcast, and Steve and I, and this was initially Steve's vision, was really just to provide a platform, just a platform for state leaders and just really state employees and just people around the state to showcase how they're serving Oklahomans. And one, we just want to take a second, thank you for the man you are, but also the way you lead and the service you provide for Oklahoma. Truly, thank you for all you do for our state.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for your leadership in state government and just the people you are.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, sir. Have a good afternoon.
And everybody at home that's listening, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, share, and comment on these videos when they're posted. I guess we'll see you again soon on another episode of the GSD Podcast. Thanks, guys.
Take care.